We are Greg and Leah, the host of Evolve, the #1 podcast about relationships, and not just the tender or toxic romantic ones, but all kinds of relationships with many people, places, and paths.
And we aren't here because we know or understand it all, simply because we are working to evolve and asking others to join the evolution.
So join us in this next episode of Evolve!
And we're live.
Yeah, welcome to another episode of Greg and Leah. In this episode, I have no idea what we're about to talk about.
Kind of like last time.
It's kind of like last episode where an epiphany happened with myself and I came running in and had some...
And said, hit the record button.
Well, this morning, Leah woke up and said, hit the record button. So here we are in our jammies and coffee and...
Yeah, and tea. I don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
But, I guess I'll start with the fact that, I woke up from a really emotional dream. I almost feel a little bit drained from it. So before I share the dream, I need to back up just about a week. I was away at a spiritual retreat and you stayed home, and in this retreat it was powerful, overwhelming, exciting, discouraging, because anytime you're going to work on yourself, stuff is going to come out and you're like, what the hell? So let me start from there, and then I'll come forward, and then I might back up. But I do want to also give this disclaimer, that for some people, what I might share could be triggering. Now, I want to talk about triggering. People think triggering means, oh, I'm going to be offended, hurt, angry, and I need to look the other way. When I heard I think it's Nicole LaPera, the How to Do the Work, my favorite psychologist, who says triggers are meant to tell you what's not fixed yet. Like, for you to have those areas that I need work here. Why do I need work? What is still undone? So if you feel triggered by any episode, let me just say that we ever bring up, I hope that you'll take the time and space not to just angrily, offendedly shut everything off, but go inside and process. Why is this disturbing?
I want to just piggyback on that before you get started. I was just talking to someone else the other day, and we were talking about our Christian background, and I said there's something that I really learned and still take back, and what I think one of the principles that was going on was, if someone else's flesh bothers you or someone else irritates you,
I think you said this years ago. Yeah.
Then you're in the flesh. You have to, something about you. So that has been something, and what you're saying now is if a trigger is just that. If you find...
It's just a notification in your body, in your emotions, in your brain that's saying, this is something that we don't want to address because this is something here.
Right.
But it's really just should be a guidepost, a signal, that's a sign that's telling you, like, hey, why don't we pull over and see what's going on?
Yeah.
Instead of not addressing it, pushing it aside, and letting it always offend you or letting it always trigger you in a negative sense. So I just wanted to throw that out there because this is going to be a little bit heavier, a little bit harder, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So if you can stick with us to the end, then you'll see the light. A week ago at this retreat, had some really great workshops, really great meditations, had some somatic healing, some yin yoga, some breath work that really went in and brought some stuff up. And what it brought up was a lot of my childhood. And I feel like for our podcast here, we've kind of been avoiding certain topics because of maybe family might hear. And I kind of realized I don't think any of our family, maybe one or two out of the large families, an extended family we have, maybe might be listening, but in all honesty, they're not. We don't have that kind of supportive family, to be honest.
If they are listening, they're probably not listening all the way through.
And they might have listened to the first actual episode of the podcast and said, no way, we're not, this is bad. They use language, they're not the same people we remember, whatever. So we've avoided a lot of topics because we thought we don't want, we also don't say names because we don't want to, pull somebody out or call them to the carpet or get in trouble, but last week at this retreat, stuff was coming up and I was sharing something very nonchalantly from my childhood, didn't think anything of it because to me it was quote unquote normal. It's just what happened in my life. And the breakfast table just kind of stopped talking. And I felt so embarrassed. And I just walked away. I was like, oh my God, how embarrassing. I just shut the table down with my trauma, apparently. I mean, because it's not that I don't recognize it was abnormal, but I just didn't think it was that out of the wheelhouse of normal. So from that, we end up going into like a yin yoga, which is very long held yogic positions that are difficult, but I didn't expect it to have a very somatic healing effect where it starts pulling stuff up from your body. Your body keeps the score, so to speak. Look more into that book. Really good book, The Body Keeps the Score. But I ended up calling you of just like falling apart. I had to actually leave part of the retreat and just like recompose myself, because what came up was just these two sentences. It was not normal and it was not okay. A lot of my childhood. So when I call you on the phone,
it's funny, but I've been saying that to you for most of our marriage.
Right, but it was the very first time I actually said it aloud.
That's not okay.
It was the first time I acknowledged and said it aloud, because I've been really good at stuffing. And part of the retreat, my intention to set forth was that I would, tap more into my feminine side, because feminine side is the more, I'll say, vulnerable, the more emotional, the more fluid, where the masculine side of all humans is more like stoic and we're going to push through and powerful, and like it's just, we need both in our bodies to function. And I've suppressed the feminine side, been more tomboyish because of my childhood and wanting to be tougher. And so I called you, the story on your end, like fell apart, and you're just like, I can't be there, I can't help you, you were states away, hours away. And I'm like, it's okay, I know I need to work this out myself. And the dream so fast forward coming into today, the dream that I woke up from, we haven't actually done an episode on dreams, because I dream a million dreams a night, usually mean nothing, and
I'm black.
You go black. You go black.
I
and
go
you go to sleep black, wake up, and nothing.
If it is a dream, it's usually provocative. So.
Oh, geez. Okay. So I have been working on a book, reading book by Joe Dispenza, which is my rec for today, as well as The Body Keeps the Score. I'll have to remember who wrote that. I can't remember at this moment.
And Nicole LaPera.
Of How to Do the Work. But the book I'm reading now is Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it's talking about how you can change your life by changing the way that we create things by manifestation, which is very deep. It goes into quantum physics, which is 99.9999% of everything is energy that we don't see. 1% of all this solid stuff is what we've seen and has been created. So we spend so much time focused on the created, not energy. Right. So it's a huge, really cool book. I was listening to meditations multiple times last night while I slept. My only thought is that it opened a can of subconscious, and I dove into this childhood stuff. And in the dream, I am confronting my mother and the man she married, as well as I feel like all the family members. I come from a big family that got blended. My mom was, let me back up. My mom was married. I've shared some of this in some of our episodes. Actually, I shared a lot of pieces of this story in multiple episodes. I was looking back. Like in episode 19, we talked about sex and our experience with sex, our relationship with sex. And I shared some of the abuse that happened in my childhood. Episode 14, we talked about money. And I shared some of the poverty places that I came from. And in that episode, I shared about how my family had to, when my mom remarried and we had multiple children, they were part of a food bank. And us older children had to dig through sometimes rotten food to get our food supply of just tin cans and stuff. And then in episode 10, we also talked about food. I grew up with food scarcity because of a lot of this, my mom being poor. So a lot of my childhood I have sparsed into different episodes. But in this one, I was going to try to pull it all together. But back to the dream, I was in this dream so angry, and I had all this family in this room, and I became this obnoxious confronter. I wanted everyone in this room. I'm screaming at my mom. I'm screaming at her husband. I'm screaming at siblings. I also was rude to anyone else around. It was early morning or something, and I'm screaming, and I'm like, I don't even care that I'm being obnoxious. It's time for you to sit down and hear what I have to say. And I just unloaded. And just why did you leave us in a house that we were being sexually abused? My older sister and I. Why did you do this? Why did you allow this? And I just berated them. And I woke up and I'm like, ugh, I don't feel any better from doing that. So I was like, what do I do with this dream? What do I do with this Like, why did it come up, and what am I supposed to do with this? Because normally, like I said, dreams are a dime a dozen in my life. I've stopped putting stock into them or trying to figure them out a long time ago because it's just way crazy and way too much. But as I'm laying there with myself this morning, I was like, okay, there must be some reason that this popped open tonight. And I know I've had a week long at the retreat and all this stuff has been coming up. And I thought I had really dealt with this. I feel like, that when we're healing and we're doing so much harsh work, like deep work to heal any area of our lives, we go through a lot of like layers. But sometimes the layers are really deep, heavy, thick, and you're just like, oh my God, it feels like this layer feels like I never did any progress prior to this. Have you ever experienced that?
Of an analogy. If you had a wound or a deep wound that you were trying to heal,
right?
You put a Band-Aid on it or a bandage on it. That bandage has to be changed. The dressing has to be
and sometimes for deep wounds, you got to flush it out and go dig it out.
When you take like a burn or when you take that bandage off, it freaking hurts. And there's, like you said, there's stuff that needs to be cleaned out. But
and then like pus and infection.
That's part of the healing process. Because if you didn't do that, then it would get infected, and then
you could lose the whole appendage. So
you have to.
Yeah, but it does feel very discouraging, and I don't know if you've had a lot of these in your life yourself, Gregory, but like, I don't know, you just feel super discouraged when a big, heavy layer comes off, and it's just like you really feel set back to zero, as if you've done no work.
Well, that was like last week when
yeah,
exactly. Like, wait a minute, I thought I dealt with this.
Oh, the last episode that you did, yeah. Like, how am I still dealing with this? And it's true.
It is just it's a reckon. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and I want to say, like, don't feel discouraged. Try to keep in the front of your mind when you hit these, just like I'm going to again, and until we really clean out all that's been hurting us, all that pain, all that history, all that past, or whatever it is that you're working through. It's okay. You're just reaching another layer, and you're going to be fine. So when I woke up from the dream, I'm like, okay, let's go here. So my takeaway was, in this subconscious dream, it was intense, emotional, and very unproductive.
So you said your spew.
I blamed everyone.
Everybody stand there.
I even brought the brother who had, molested me back from the dead. Like, I don't know. In the dream, he was back in the space. And then my parents were trying to get us to hug or something. And I was like, I actually said, I don't feel safe with you. I'm sorry, I can't say that. And still, it's been over 35 years, something like that. And I yelled at him. I'm like, I don't feel safe with you. And like everyone shut down. So like I had everyone in this dream back from the dead and like alive and in my space. And it was just very unproductive. So what did my conscious awake self, what was my takeaway after really meditating on that was just that confronting people, our past, our parents, our whatever that history is, maybe an ex, whatever, and just unloading on them all your hurts, pains, because you need to be seen, heard, loved, wanted, felt safe, apologized to, whatever, is very unproductive.
Unfulfilling.
It's very unfulfilling. And that confrontation can never hold the power to heal our hurts. Pursuing that kind of route can never heal the pain. And the only way we can heal is we choose to, which means undoing the bandage, which means purging that thing out with peroxide or alcohol or painful astringents, because we care about our whole self and being whole. So like my takeaway was that we just heal because of choice and making the choice to do the really hard work to heal. So that was like the takeaway of like, okay, why did that? Because the dream made me feel I woke up drained and yuck and horrible feeling. And I was like, you know what? I get it now. Like I can't.
Well, what does the work mean to you when you say you have to do the work? What are you having to do?
For me, and this is a great question. I hadn't really thought about that question, but I know the answer immediately. And for me, it's exactly what happened and came up last week, is me acknowledging what I've stuffed. Because I have stuffed things in the wound to try to fix it.
Right.
And then wrapped it and made sure my leg or whatever part of it is, metaphorically speaking, looked normal.
Right.
And I won't lie, I used a lot of religion and my deep, it wasn't fake, it wasn't shallow, deep relationship with God in my Christianity at that time to like cover over it. Like I used the thing like, oh, it's at the feet of Christ, I'm good. I don't need to ever unpack this. And really, this might offend others if they ever listen this far in, but like, if that is your belief system, you might be like, oh my God, blasphemy, you can't even say that, because if it's at Christ's feet, then we don't have to deal with it. I 100% disagree now. So for me, that work has been undoing the bandage and actually looking at this. And last week, like I said, was the first time I've ever said, my childhood wasn't normal and it wasn't okay. Like, another thought that came up, and I shared this with you last week, was remembering my biological father. And when we were with him, my mom had full custody as far as I remember or understand, but when we had him on the weekends, we went to his house. He was very cheap. Not that he bought cheap quality stuff, he just wouldn't, he was stingy. Ebenezer Scrooge, I would even say. And cold as ice, his house, very often in the winter seasons. We got like an inch of bath water because I just remember being told we don't have enough water, or there wasn't enough heat to heat the water, and just being cold, and like certain things just started coming up as I was going through this spiritual retreat last weekend. And I was like, why is this coming up? Like, I don't want to think about this. And just the narratives that I was told over childhood, just the examples that I was given over childhood, my dad dropping us off, my mother, my older sister, and myself, I was 2, and just putting us in an apartment and saying, he's done with my mom. That's not normal, and it's not okay. My mom working multiple jobs and then hiring a female babysitter who was only 16, who I know had her own baggage, sexually abusing us. That wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. My mom marrying the person she did, and the things that unrolled, him having 3 sons, those 2 of the 3 abusing my sibling and I, wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. Like, us having to dig through food for our food from a food bank, it wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm not okay. No.
I mean, you look so serious over there. And I know this is serious. It's not light. But this has been my work. I've had to stop glossing over everything, because I think I might have shared in other episodes, but definitely with you in our lifetime, I have a great family. I would even tell people like, my family would support me no matter what. I remember telling one of my older siblings one time that go turn to so-and-so, talk to them. We have such a supportive family. And that sibling said, what are you talking about? Where do you live? What is your fantasy? Because we don't have a supportive family. And I was just always glossing over or pretending everything was fine in my world.
So last night we were watching, our show that series we were watching, and the one character in the series was an adopted black boy
into a white
family. A white family in the early
80s,
70s,
late 70s, early 80s, yeah.
And so he's now an adult, successful, brilliant, whatever, but he's going to therapy, and he's in a group of interracial adopted kids grown up.
Support group. Yeah.
And he's finding out that the common denominator, which this is a form of abuse. Your biological parents have
neglect, like in his situation. Right, his parents dropped him off at a fire station.
But there is that something he never even knew. A ghost fantasy family.
Ghost Kingdom, it was called.
Ghost Kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's what you're...
Oh, I didn't realize it until you're mentioning it now. But yeah, I built my own... And I have done video clips prior when I was building the life coaching brand, and so to speak. I did an episode of that where as a child I built fantasies. I built safety into my ghost kingdom, we'll call it.
Right.
I convinced myself I had greatness, and I even had Stockholm syndrome, I will say, with one of my abusers. I loved that person because they psychologically were treating me so well while they were physically abusing my body.
Right.
So it's so messed up what can happen to us internally, mentally, emotionally. But yeah, so the answer to that is my work has been peeling it back and actually looking and realizing and calling the wound a wound.
Right. So the answer to your question then, or my question to you then, is actually naming it.
Yeah, and saying,
calling it for what it is.
This is ugly, and this is not healthy.
Does that diffuse the energy or make it? back to my situation last week, I had to acknowledge, you guys got to get the fuck out of here and start picking out the people that are saying the right things, and listening to them, and what voices were I'm going to listen to rather than the voices that are yelling and screaming at me. But this is a different scenario, though. It is a narrative or a story that actually happened.
Right. And I would say, so you're asking me, so going back to the question, are you asking me what
is your work? And you said one is to name it, call it out, call it for what it is. Right. And then what then?
I think for me, I had tried about 5, almost 6 years ago, maybe now, I didn't actually intend to, but a family explosion happened and all this stuff started coming back up. And it was not as violent, I'll say, as the dream that I had. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't yelling. I was actually pretty calm.
But it wasn't helpful
But
either.
it wasn't helpful. It has destroyed the family because we have 8 siblings is what ended up in the blended family of the yours, mine, ours situation. None of them talk to each other that I'm aware of. Other than me and a younger sibling are now close. But it's essentially splintered the family, and I got blamed for it, for splintering the family. And I accepted that blame for a little bit of time. And then as I've been doing the work, I've realized, no, our family was splintered, but we were pretending, all were pretending it wasn't. That we were all a great, happy Christian family.
And I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about,
which we're going to do an episode if you would like.
Well,
of
I'm
your
thinking
childhood.
about what my kids think about. I mean,
sure.
I could tell you all the shit. They have the same abuse, similar. They could actually say the same damn thing. That was not right.
It wasn't right, and it wasn't okay.
And it wasn't.
And
okay.
I want to say, I give anyone permission to say that. If you haven't given yourself, like me, permission to say that.
And that's what I'm saying now.
It's I know normal, and it's not okay.
That, like you said, if lots of family members could be listening.
I doubt it, but I just doubted. We've never had that supportive of a family on either side, unfortunately.
My kids have that right. I have that right to say it about my family.
And this is where the truth is. And there are multiple realities.
It's true. And I can, as I've interviewed, as I will put it, my mother in circumstances to see, as we've talked over the years, she didn't have the cookie-coated family that I thought she had either. She was pretty... So... We've been hurt people.
Sure.
Or don't even know any better terms.
Well, and I will say my family, what also again is not normal and not okay, is the fact that no one ever talked. Like, let's not talk about that. My biological father as well as my biological mother. And it just was ingrained into me, not by words, but by example, by action. We don't talk about this. So I learned to stuff.
That's most families. They don't
true.
Talk. They get together for one occasion on Thanksgiving or Christmas, and it's all about the good old days of what happened.
But I think there's a reason why we don't talk. Because no one really has the emotional intelligence. We're not taught that anywhere. At school, at home, at church, at any of our religious gatherings. Like, we're not taught how to emotionally regulate and to listen and give the other person space and to realize there's multiple realities. Everyone gets offended. Everyone shuts down. Everyone accuses the other. So no one knows how to rectify anything. So we can't bring it up in any situation
all we do talk
scenario.
about is playground.
Yeah, like the past
kiddie
good
pool,
memories.
No depth
to it. Exactly.
Because we're all one. So, we all one are putting a face on to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to not damage somebody else's face that they got put on.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of where I'm healing, and like this is just another layer of that. It just has been probably the deepest one so far, where it's just like, oh my God, like, are we sure we ever addressed this before? Because it feels really difficult, really painful. But what I feel, positively speaking, is as we dig this out, the digging out is really painful. It is that pus, that infective stuff that's been in there for way too long. But after the cleaning, after the fresh bandage, after the reprieve of like, oh, I can put that leg up or whatever, metaphorically speaking, it is that's suffering so bad, feels so much better. And now I'm starting to see the healed skin, the freshness, the no longer of the smelling of rottenness in my life, you know. So my biggest takeaway for today, I will say, is last week my biggest takeaway was just the acknowledgement of those two sentences. It wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. This today, a week later, what's coming up for me is just that, like, confrontation is not the answer. I'm not going to ever confront family again or bring it up, because that's not, I won't get from there what I need to give myself.
Right.
Like, I think we're always looking, like, even if you go to someone because you need them to apologize to you, what are you asking them to fix? How is enough? Like, I mean, I had someone ask me, prior, when I was working through another layer of this years ago, like, what would be enough for your family to say, for your parents and those guardians who were put to protect you as a child who didn't and failed, what would be enough that they could say? And I was like, honestly, probably nothing, because the damage is already done. So what can they really say? Can they say sorry enough? Can they take enough responsibility? Can they give enough reasons why they didn't make the proper actions? So I don't think so. So it has to come from myself.
In an early episode, we talked about people who carry around dead cats.
Mm-hmm.
But you're sounding like what you're saying is we all are carrying around dead cats that we're keeping in a narrative inside sometimes, that we're not just... It's annoying when someone's coming to you talking about their dead cat all the time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go see that episode. Yeah. But it's just as draining as hearing yourself talk about the same dead cat over and over again. And
that's why you have to do the work to heal.
You have to first name the cat, like you said. Okay, you're this, and then you have to let that cat go. You have to go bury it. So it has to be
there has to be healing, and it has to come from ourselves. And I think I just didn't realize that before. So going back to my faith and my religion in decades past, like, I mean, I had a deep faith. I mean, you can look at that listen to that episode in like episode 1 or 2 of us, when we started talking about our faith and our background. The original outlet for me was, oh, God's got it. It's at the feet of Christ. Don't worry about it. And then when we kind of started making different transitions, it was, oh no, I'm fine. I mean, I'm pretty confident in myself. I don't need to address that. I mean, we just kind of kept, I won't say we, but like I kept unconsciously giving it to someone else to deal with. And when really the only way we're ever going to recover and heal this gaping wound in our lives, when we've had this much trauma, which I have mentioned in previous video clips, not in the Evolved podcast, but like I've come to call it over the last several years, like my perfect trifecta of trauma, because of the broken home, the sexual abuse, and then I have a physical deformity that actually you don't know about yet. I'll share in another one. But I called it like my perfect trifecta of trauma, that I just accepted. Even that, like that, my physical deformity, it's not normal and it's not okay. Like I've never met
no one
a person,
can explain it.
And no one can explain it. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And I just remember being so embarrassed and just everything. I mean, a lot of my history, there's a lot of embarrassment. And I think embarrassment we also bury so that we don't have to feel it. But I hear this all the time, and I know it sounds super cliche. You have to feel it to heal it. And a family member recently, like a months ago, texted me a meme about like, Kermit the Frog or something looking really awkward, and it said on the bottom like how I look when people ask about my family. And I responded to this person text only, because this is where our relationship is currently after all the fallout. I said, is that really how you respond when people ask about our family? And they said back, texting, and said, when people ask about the family, I either pretend I didn't hear them or I change the subject altogether. And that is someone who can't process. That's my belief. Like they cannot feel it, because it is really painful. They won't allow themselves to feel it, to heal it.
I was going to say, they don't want to feel it.
And I would say that's most of my family, except for one that I've been able to talk to. And we can swim in the deep end now together, because we can go through stuff. And I think people in certain generations, especially now backwards, like my age and up, that's what I mean. So 45 and up, or even 30 and up. They think, why bring it up? That's the narrative. Why are you bringing this up?
Right.
How is it going to help to bring up old hurts and wounds? And they're right on 50% of this. You don't need to bring it up with the people who hurt you, but you do need to bring it up in yourself. Mm. And again, going back to how we opened with the triggers, like if you feel triggered by something, don't try to go to someone else and have that person fix your trigger. by apologizing, acknowledging, by any of the stuff that you think you need to get from the the person who hurt you or the person who should have protected you. Honestly, I've just never seen it work. Never seen it work for someone to really go and try to confront somebody about something. The only way I really believe for myself, and maybe you have a different belief, but is you have to be for yourself what you needed. And there is a statement that's floating around Facebook and social media, and it just says, and I love, love, love it. It says, you've become the person little you would have felt safe with. And that is just so powerful for me, because I 100% agree that, I have become the person, and I am a person that little me would have gone to and protected, and I would have protected her at all costs. I mean, it's just super powerful for sure. But I don't know, I feel like as we work through it, as we get that reprieve, as we get the infection out, now we can use that appendage properly, and we get the strength back and start building it up. So that's kind of what I wanted to acknowledge and also say out loud, is like giving myself last week the permission to say it wasn't normal, it wasn't okay. It was like hurtful at the same time to acknowledge that reality, but also very liberating to be like, oh my God, I can say this and it's true. And today I can say confrontation isn't necessarily, and when I say confrontation, I don't mean you always have to come aggressively, but normally you do. Like if someone's hurt and they're coming to the person who hurt them, it's going to come out aggressive most times. Yeah. It's going to come out very accusatory and like, you did, it's your fault. When there are the other part that I didn't share of my revelation, and in the dream what happened was the parentals, the guardians, who are here that I'm screaming at, they started telling me a little bit of their whys. Why they didn't remove these boys from the household. Why they didn't involve authorities. Why we were scrounging for food. And in the dream, it wasn't enough. I mean, it was like, that's not a good reason. But that I think it also showed me they had talked about it. They do have feelings about it. But they can't go there either because it's so painful. It's kind of like you just said with your children, that they have had a lot of the same experiences I have. They could look at you and I and say, you didn't do shit about it.
It's true.
And how does that make you feel to feel that? So like there's more sides and more realities than we give credit to. We think our side and our truth is the only one, the only truth, and I don't want to hear anything that doesn't resonate with it.
And that's the thing too. There's never going to be a good enough reason when you haven't accepted your internal. Yeah. And
that's what I'm saying. It has to be you who does the work. So I feel better. Like as it comes out, I just feel better and better and better. And I'm also finding myself able to, I don't know if the word is accept. I don't know if that's the right word yet, but have a little more maturity and understanding for other parties involved.
Right.
Like, of hearing, even in the dream, some of the whys. They might not even be the real people's whys. It's just an example my brain gave myself of like, hey, they have felt guilt about it. They have suffered over it. It's just they don't have the emotional intelligence or the words or the want to express it. So,
well, sometimes the past hurts so bad, and then it's not even when you say you forgive or forget things or go further. Sometimes the relationship's been so damaged. It's such a lot of it's a lot of work just to take care of yourself.
Yeah,
it's even more work to try to even start from scratch on that issue. I mean, and I know that.
And sometimes you just can't, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
I've had to accept that because I was very much somebody who was in my past, like I wanted to fix everything and get everything in the open because I hated the darkness.
Because we're family.
And, well, let me read you what I just found today.
Because we're family, because
family is like you fix it and you just deal with it and, hey, support each other because we're family. But if I'm the only one giving out that kind of energy, I'm exhausting myself and getting nothing in return.
And that's the same narrative on other people, too. Yeah. I mean, they think that, and I know that for a fact.
Sure, they think they've given
everything that they can't.
Right.
And so they're saying, they can say the same things. And this is where their story is real and
Right.
true, and
you have
also
to have the
true
maturity
for
to
them.
give them that credit
And you
and
gotta
let
give
them have
them-
that story and let them have that reality.
Whatever it's right in their mind, just
Yeah.
like it's right in your own mind. And
Right.
it doesn't mean it's right. It just means that's how it is. It's your
Yeah.
narrative, and that's because
It's the ability to give everyone their own reality.
Yeah.
Because
This-
I have also heard in my own family, people say, that's not the house we grew up in.
Right.
I don't know what you're talking about, and you're obviously way out in left field. That didn't happen to me. But because it didn't happen to you, doesn't mean that it didn't happen to me.
Right.
Like, and I'm not really given that credit to say, like, I don't get that space to be given that reality. But this came up today on my one of my social media feeds, and I love this. It says, as you get older, you start to understand the difference between friends and associates, family and blood, business and work, love and lust, want and need, and most of all, what's important and what's not. And going back to what you said about family, there is family, but there's blood. I have blood relatives, but then I have family. Family is the people, like my chosen family versus my given family.
Right,
You know, who is the chosen family now that I do allow in my space, who are helping me heal.
Right.
Like you're helping me heal. My younger sibling's helping me heal. My son is helping me heal. That's it. That's the only people who are willing to just go through this with me, because you see how dark and ugly it can get at times. You've been through me for 25 years, and some of it you had to process without any knowledge. You just saw me spiraling or reacting, having no real understanding what it was anchored to.
So I'm very thankful that I did not know some of the things I knew early on, because there would have been some hurt people for sure.
Yeah.
There
Well,
would have been,
you know, when
there
I
would have
did,
been more death in the family.
I will say
than-
though, you've controlled yourself, because people were still alive when I did share some things, and you
Yes.
just restrained yourself for different reasons.
it was
so
very, very difficult.
But yeah, it's just, there are only a few that I can call now family who will, one, sit to hear the hard stuff. Even if it's 100 times over, you're still hearing it, you know, now, like, oh my God, are we still talking about this? But you give me the space to heal, to grow, to process. Not everyone can, and I have to accept that. So there is light at the end of the tunnel when you're healing and doing the work for yourself. I feel like we're like you mentioned the other episode, I think we're like internal, like how you have body sensations. Your emotions creates feelings in your body, like physical feelings. It's tightness, it's tension, it's stress, it's nausea, it's headaches, it's chronic reoccurring issues when we don't address stuff. And people don't connect those dots ever. We just think, oh, I have arthritis because I have arthritis, or my mama had it. Sometimes it might just be bitterness that's in your damn bones.
Yeah.
Dig it out. Like, get rid of it. You don't have to be stuck with this. So
bitterness in your family's just bitterness.
yeah,
Bitterness.
and you can stop
energy,
that.
Energy is transferred.
So, I mean, that's all for today. I know we've gone like a little bit over our normal time that we try to stick to, but I just wanted to share my evolution of my relationship with my childhood and how bittersweet it is for me. It is difficult, but it's also so liberating. And I feel like I'm coming into just my own self. Like I am breaking out of some kind of a mold or some kind of a casket that I buried myself in. And I'm coming out and coming to myself and being this whole healthy person that I'm super proud of. And I appreciate your love, space, time, attention, affection, because I would say that's probably the number one reason that I'm able to heal is how much you love me. And that's it. Anything else after you're done crying?
Crying.
You're not crying. I'm a little teary-eyed. I'm working on getting. I'm working on getting them close to my feminine
There's a
side.
feminine girl in there.
There is. So until next time, work on those parts of yourself. I know it sounds scary, daunting, and overwhelming.
Well,
but
it's funny
worth
that
it.
we listened to, you just went on an airplane flight over to where your retreat was, and I bet they said, always take care of yourself before you can put the mask on somebody else. And no one listens to that. We always think that we have to take care of others, and that keeps our minds busy for not taking care of ourselves.
Correct. It's distraction. So stop distracting yourself and take care of you. And until next time, like,
subscribe, and please comment.
yeah, let us know that you're out there, you're listening, and that you relate, that this improves and is helping you evolve. That's the whole point of this whole podcast, is we're evolving and working and healing and growing and hoping that it inspires you to work, heal, grow, evolve. And until next time, everyone, Be evolving, people.